Here we go. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is vegan Michele, and she's going to help us learn how we can change our relationship with food. She is part of the Ultimate Vegan Health and Weight Loss Bundle. She's going to talk about what she has in the bundle. And if you don't know what the bundle is, where you been? It's day 4 now, Friday, Saturday. Yep, day 4. It is a compilation of over 120 distinct brand new ebooks, courses, videos from over 100 contributors, such as your favorite plant-based doctors, influencers, chefs, and athletes. Many of the courses sell for $200 to $400, but for 10 days only, for $49, you get the whole enchilada. It's a no-brainer to buy. People are loving it. The feedback we're getting is amazing. The courses are amazing, and so are all the contributors, such as the one I'm going to introduce you to now. She's been on the show before, and her name is Michele. Can't pronounce her last name. Not going to try, so we'll call her Vegan Michele. Welcome back. Nice to see you.
Hey, Chef AJ, thank you so much for having me and letting me be a part of the bundle. I think this is always such a fantastic bundle, and I love that you have brand new stuff every time because I think that's really important to people, and it forces us all to make some new stuff to give out.
Yeah, and then when people say, well, I bought the bundle, like, well, not this one, because it's new. Yep. You couldn't have. I got a brand new course. You couldn't have bought it. So tell us about what you have in the bundle, and also if you had a chance to look at and what else you might like in the bundle.
Yeah, totally. So my contribution is a little mini course I put together called Change Your Relationship with Food. And it's an excerpt from my Vegan Michele Wellness Method, which is what I do coaching. I'm a holistic nutritionist, and I coach people one-on-one and in group settings. But I think that it's great to have lots of information on different recipes because that's going to keep you moving forward. But there's also this mental aspect of our relationship with food. And I can say that I struggled with it the majority of my life, binge eating and, buying into my excuses that I was telling myself and learning a lot, but not really taking the action. And so those are the key areas that I talk about in my contribution to the bundle. But beyond mine, there's so much good information in there. There's a lot of other people that have contributions that talk about mindful eating, which I think is just so important. You can't just slap diet and exercise on something and expect to completely make that changeover. I always love Plentiful Kiki's recipes. I love your recipes. I made a video last week with your Instant Pot Mexicali rice. So delicious.
Thank you.
Easy, so easy. And I still have some left over, which I'm going to probably have for lunch today. I love Raw Food Romance. Dressing, anything like dressing wise she makes is always really good. Her husband, Nathan's brownies, raw brownies. Oh my God, they're so delicious. I've definitely eaten those many a time. There's lots of good stuff in there. And what I think is great about a bundle situation is that you always get to be learning and trying new things, because for me personally, that's what keeps me motivated. I've been a vegan for about 16 years. And I think that having new recipes, new things to learn, learning new science, it keeps you motivated. It keeps you on the track to want to keep doing this.
Absolutely. People don't realize unless they're, have contributed to a bundle that a lot of the bundle contributors, some of them don't even promote it. They're like, I'm just going to put a product in there so I get the bundle. And if you have a product, let us know, because maybe next year you'll be part of the bundle.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see if there's any. Well, tell us about your history with food, because it seems that it's very common for, I think, especially women, maybe even more so than men, not that men don't suffer, to have a discordant relationship with food.
Oh, totally. I think I was first on a diet like at 8 or 9. I was always the chubby kid. I was called Thunder Thighs in grade school. And I was, on Weight Watchers, all the diets. My mom would make me run the mile. And it was excruciating when I was like 12. And I've always had a problem with binge eating. Later, I became a professional singer and dancer. And so your weight is a big deal. And what you look like is a big deal. And so I would, restrict to lead up to an audition, almost faint because I haven't eaten in days, and then binge and go crazy with food eating. In my book, a binge is anything that you do against your will. You're over drinking, overeating. Sometimes it's premeditated. I would think about like, oh, I'm going to make brownies this weekend and I'm going to go for it. And you open those floodgates and that was me for the majority of my life. And I just kind of was like, you know what, this is not serving me anymore. It's making me feel super anxious. I feel disgusting every time I finish this. There's a lot of guilt and shame attached. And then just being like, there's got to be a better way. So just walking myself out of that, I can say I'm finally free of it, but I do know that it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and it can be very challenging, but it's not impossible to change your patterns when it comes to that kind of eating pattern. It is possible to change.
What are the steps that somebody takes? And does it matter how long or how deeply they've suffered, or is there always hope?
I think there's always hope. But, obviously there's different levels of where you're at when it comes to binge eating, or when it comes to excuses, or just, not being able to feel like you can't take action. To me, the things that have been the best tools that I could share here would be to, when that urge comes, that little voice in your head, the devil on your shoulder, and it's telling you, hey, let's do this. It's going to be fun. This time won't be so bad. You're going to enjoy it. You won't feel sick afterwards. Just recognize that those are lies. They're all lies that we're telling ourselves, as these things are going on, and being able to say that urge to binge does not equal or have to mean that I have to binge. And being able to stop and say, okay, no, I'm going to do things differently this time, and then have a plan for yourself. So sitting with it, maybe asking yourself, why do I want to do this? Maybe it's because I've made it so often in my life that now it's just become this habit. Maybe it's because every Friday I always do this. Maybe it's because I'm stressed at work, or I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling emotional, or I want something to do that I can just shut my mind off and decompress. Whatever it is, being able to maybe journal about that, write it down, just recognize why this is your mode of choice. An alcoholic would choose a drink. I and many people choose food. And it's just really figuring out, okay, this is what it is, and sitting with that. It's like almost like I was in this birthing class one time, and the instructor was saying labor and contractions are like putting a piece of ice on your hand and letting it melt. And if you can get through the ice melting on your hand, you will get through this contraction. And so it's the same thing with a binge. Sitting there, recognizing, okay, I'm not going to do this pattern that I've always done. I'm going to go do something else, whether that is journaling, whether it's going to brush your teeth, getting outside to go for a walk, something else. Call somebody. Hey, listen, I know I want to be healthy and I'm struggling here. Remind me why I decided to go down this healthy path. Something to get you out of that situation and find some alternatives for yourself. And then also just imagining yourself, what will it be like when you can honor your long-term goals and you actually can succeed with that? How do you imagine yourself? You could fit in your jeans, you could be running around with your grandchildren, you could have reversed your type 2 diabetes. All of these things are so important to look and reflect on in that moment, because I really feel like we're capable of so much more than instant gratification. That's not what we're here for. There's a lot more than just that. So those are the kinds of things that I think will help with a binge. It's not easy, but we can do things that are not easy also.
Do you think that if people haven't never dieted, they're not going to struggle the way, you know what I'm saying? Like, is there anybody that binges that's never gone on a restrictive diet, for example?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there, but I think as somebody who's struggled with their weight, and I'm sure that you can identify with this also, you see, like, I just want to be normal. How can I be normal like those people over there who stop eating when they're full and don't need to, hide their food? But I think that it definitely plays hand in hand. I think that when you are restricting your eating, a natural tendency is to binge because you're hungry. And one of the ways to help with that also is to have lots of different whole food, plant-based recipes that are healthy for you. Because when you're feeding your body the fuel it needs to thrive, you are less likely to binge because you're actually full and you're satisfied and you're getting all the nutrients that you need on a daily basis, so that you're not going to be like, I need a cake. So yeah.
Absolutely. So it's hard, though, when people come from a restrictive background and yet they still want and need to lose weight. You know what I mean? I mean, when they understand plant-based eating and calorie density, it's a lot easier. But so many people have the mindset that the only way to lose weight is to restrict.
Yeah. Well, then, have some recipes for yourself. I always say this, like 3 to 5 recipes that have become your new normals for what you would go to. Maybe before you would have a chocolate milkshake from McDonald's. Now you're going to go and you're going to make a homemade sweet smoothie that contains some coconut milk ice cubes, a plant milk, frozen bananas, and cacao powder, for example, to give you that chocolate milk shake kind of feel. Little things like that. You just start to slowly build up your arsenal of go-tos. And when you feel like you really want to go for a bender, just say, I'm not going to do it this time because ... is my reason why. And I look forward to this and this. I'm going to go have this shake, and then I'm going to go brush my teeth, and I'm going to get out of the kitchen and stop looking in the refrigerator, because that's not helping anybody.
Yeah. One of the live viewers named Sam asks, how do you relearn hunger, real true hunger and fullness, especially when you've made a habit of going from 0 to 100 every day, once a day?
Totally. I think that's a great question. And I think it's something that happens one meal at a time. If you picture, and this concept is borrowed from volumetrics. If you picture a scale, a hunger scale from 0 to 10, 0 being absolutely famished, ravenous, 10 being so full, you got to unbutton your pants and you feel sick. Aiming to end every meal at about a 5 to an 8, where you're satisfied. You relearn what it feels like to be satisfied rather than overstuffed. And if you're not having anything all day, and then you're eating one gigantic pizza at night, for example, then trying to incorporate meal planning and having some things that are ready in your refrigerator so that you can eat regular meals. I'm not big on snacking, because I feel like, for me personally, I just can tend to overdo the snacks. So I have my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or some days I just do 2 meals, where it's a big morning meal and a larger afternoon meal. At whatever structure works for you, do that. And then as you're eating bite by bite, ask yourself, am I satisfied? If worse comes to worse and you're not satisfied and you still have food in the fridge that you prepared on Sunday, you can go back in 20 minutes and eat some more. But being able to cue into that, I think, is really important, and just asking where you are on that hunger scale. Are you ravenous? Maybe you shouldn't wait that long to eat. Maybe you should, at the whisper of hunger, when it's just saying, I'm hungry, or you have those physical signs of hunger, your stomach is growling, you're pissed off about things, like, that's the time to eat, So yeah, I would just go meal by meal in that way.
Right. I joke, if you're not hungry enough to eat vegetables, you're probably not hungry, because many reasons other than true hunger. They eat because they're angry, lonely, tired, stressed, bored, anxious. There's so many reasons people eat and that's why I feel like the food you choose really says it, because if you're really hungry, a delicious sweet potato is going to satisfy you. But if it has to be, fried sweet potato fries, maybe not.
Yeah, totally. And I'm definitely of the same mindset. Dr. Jensen used to say, you eat when you have the natural desire to eat real foods. If you're not having those desires to eat real foods that come from the ground and the trees, most likely you're not hungry. But you bring up a great point. A big sweet potato is very satisfying. Beans are satisfying. When I was losing weight after my last pregnancy, I just was not satisfied ever. And I started adding a little bit more beans to my meal, and that really helped me personally. So that could be something, Sam, that could be beneficial as well.
Right. Well, Dr. McDougall, who's going to be on the show at 10 o'clock today, always says no starch, no satiety, because, it's great to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. But for most people, especially I find people that have binge, you've got to have that starch. You need that stick-to-itiveness,
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Sam also had a question, which I think there's a problem in the question. How do you retrain your physical body to be comfortable with less food in a sitting? I don't think you ever do that. I think that's the problem, is because you haven't eaten the right foods. Because Robbie Barbero eats 14 pounds of food a day, and he's diabetic and not overweight. If you're eating the right foods, you don't have to weigh and measure your food, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that. I think that, it's a process. You have to start to become mindful. Wherever you're at today, myself included, I'm not saying this just to you, Sam, but wherever you're at today is the result of the eating patterns and the choices that you've made, your whole lifetime through. And if something's not working, it's time to try something different. So I do believe that the foods that are included in a whole food plant-based diet keep you nutritionally sound, but they also give you that satisfaction. And I'm not one of those people who can eat the whole kitchen sink and lose weight if that has been my goal in the past. I do have to be mindful of it. But the good news is, as you are mindful of it, the more your taste buds will change, the more you will want to eat these types of food, the more you will feel satisfied as you eat them, and you prepare them in a way that is satisfactory to you. That makes a big, big difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth, who made a great suggestion, she bought the bundle for someone for a gift. This is a great gift. What about a Valentine? She said, can you be hungry instead of needing water? Not sure. I would think.
Well, I think I kind of understand where that's at. Like a lot of times, I have numerous clients who don't drink any water at all. And oftentimes you might just be thirsty. So give that a shot first. If you've just eaten a big meal and you just want something, that's different than eating a big meal and 10, 15 minutes later being like, you know what, I haven't had any water all day today. Let me have some water first, cup of green tea, see how I feel after that. That might just be the thing. Maybe you were thirsty. Not always the case, but absolutely. If you're not, take an honest look at how much water you're drinking on a daily basis. And about 2 liters or more, if you're more active, is, I think, a good minimum.
Yeah, great. Let's see if there's any questions. Karen says, I do recognize that many times I'm not really hungry, but feel the need for something satisfying, whether sweet or salty, like chips. How do we change this bad habit?
I'd love to hear your suggestions, AJ, but I think that one of the ways that you can do that is, I think, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody by saying this, but sometimes we just have to discipline ourselves and we have to parent ourselves and say, this is where I want to go, and I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. But there are totally, of course, hummus and carrots are not the same as potato chips. But again, if you have made some oil-free hummus at home and you have that and you dip some veggies in it, that can satisfy that salty craving sometimes. Maybe it is cutting up a corn tortilla and putting in the toaster or the oven at about 400 with a little lime and salt on there. And you have, tortilla chip shapes, and you eat, the equivalent of 1 or 2 tortillas with some salsa. That could do it. Again, I'm a big replacement kind of person until you can kind of wean yourself off of these very addictive foods. What do you think, AJ? What are some of your go-to?
Well, here's the thing, I see this a lot. The problem is in the question, why isn't what you're eating satisfying? So I'm wondering what, Karen, will post what you're eating, because see, everything I eat is delicious. And I find that, like Dr. Furman, who's also in the bundle, by the way, with a great course, always says hunger is the best sauce. So if I'm truly hungry, food, hummus and vegetables will taste good to me. So I find that if you make all your food satisfying, you're not going to need something satisfying. So that's what I say. But I'd like to know what you're eating, Karen. I also like to know what you eat, Michele, just because, not because your course is about this, but every guest on the show, people just want to know what they eat.
Oh yeah, people always want to know that. My most popular YouTube videos are always what I eat in a day. And I think it's important to know that when you see somebody's video like that, you can't take that as like gospel truth. Every day has ebbs and flows, right? But typically, I personally, I like fruit. So I'll do, I do green juice in the morning with some whole fruit, or I do make a big smoothie. I like the way I feel with that. I know not everybody's the same. I personally don't like oatmeal, but I also know that a lot of people love oatmeal. So find a breakfast, a couple alternatives that you can go through, whether it's a smoothie or oatmeal or some overnight oats or something of that. And then I eat about twice a day, and then maybe I'll have a snack like later if I'm feeling like I need something more. My main meal typically consists of a whole intact grain, as well as some legumes, beans, lentils, something of that sort, and a giant salad. I always have a big salad every day. I like raw veggies personally over steamed or cooked veggies, but sometimes I'll throw in some broccoli in there or some roasted Brussels sprouts in there. And that sounds pretty basic and boring. And some days it is basic and boring, but there's really easy ways to make something very tasty. Like if you made a bolognese with lentils, if you go to my website, veganmichele.com, I have a bolognese. I have lots of different ways to incorporate these food groups that are in a whole food plant-based diet and make it taste good. Because I don't like when my food is boring and bland. I want it to taste good. I want it to be enjoyable. And it comes back to what you were saying, AJ, is that when you eat your food that you like, it is satisfying. So finding, whether that's rolling through all the cookbooks in the bundle and finding somebody's way that they prepare food that is just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I got to have every recipe, do that. And then move on to the next recipe book that looks interesting to you and go through their recipes. Every time you go through somebody's different ebook or recipe book, you're going to learn how they particularly cook. You're going to learn their mastery of how they do the skills and what type of seasonings and things that they use. And then you move on to the next one and you learn their set of skills. So it's really just trial and error, I think, really to find something that works for you. I love to have a really big, satisfying meal as my main meal, because that carries me through the rest of the day. And if I'm ever wanting something sweet, in a blue moon, I will have something like just a regular vegan brownie. It might have earth balance in it, but that's like maybe 4 times a year for a special occasion. But other than that, I have my alternatives. I have my chocolate shake from my cookbook Eating Whole. I have those raw brownies from Dude Food that Nathan makes in this bundle. They're so good. Just little things like that for when those cravings come up. But other than that, I like eating this way because it is tasty and it is satisfying, and my taste buds have changed over. And I know that can be the same for you, anybody who's watching.
I love how Andrew Spudfit Taylor, the guy that ate nothing but potatoes for an entire year and lost 120 pounds, said, make your food boring, make your life interesting. Because, if people are using food for emotional reasons, they're never going to be satisfied. That's the other thing.
That's so true. I think that's really true. If you've got nothing going for you except for food, it's time to find some new interests and new connections in life. And, I don't say that in a sarcastic way at all, because I've definitely been there when there was nothing going for me except for food. And I was living to eat and get to that next meal and that next dopamine hit. But when you eat the healthier foods and you can kind of find that balance for yourself and you have satisfaction, God, there's so much more in life to partake in and to make a difference in other people's lives. Even something as simple as, going to the grocery store and you see the person on the corner and you hand them a bunch of bananas. Like, doing something as simple as that can shift your focus. It doesn't have to all be all consuming. What am I going to eat next? What I'm going to eat next? There's so much more to be enjoyed in this life.
Yep. Karen says, I'm eating plant-based and I love the food, but I feel it's more of an anxiety or for the sake of calming my feelings. The tortilla is a great idea. Yeah. If the problem is anxiety, the solution isn't food. The solution is exercise or cognitive behavioral therapy with Dr. Doug Lisle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, I can't think of who said this originally, but if hunger is not the problem, food is not the solution every single time. And taking in that moment when you're like, I need to eat the whole pack of tortillas, step away from the kitchen and breathe deeply. I know this sounds so trite and it's just like, oh yeah, breathe deeply, but it really does make a difference. It shifts something that's going to shift you out of that moment is so important. It could be deep breaths. It could be just go outside. If it's cold, getting that fresh air on your face will be like, okay, what are you doing? Snap it together, get it together. And, I think it's just super important to have these tools in your arsenal to be able to help you that are not food.
Absolutely. Sam is saying, I'm sorry, I'm guessing it's your girl, but Sam could be either. So that she's mostly raw. And there, for some people, that is not going to be enough satiety because starch is really what's going to make you feel full.
Totally. I totally agree with that. I love eating lots of raw food, but I don't think I'll ever be 100% raw for ever and ever because I don't feel fully satisfied. As soon as I add in even one meal of the starchy vegetables or whole intact grains or have some element of beans in my meal, God, I feel so much better. I know that's not the case for everybody. And some people can go completely raw and have no problems, but if completely raw is where you want to be, Sam, that's fine. And I think that's great, but step it down. You don't have to go from A to B in like seconds. You can do things, moment by moment. I know like Lissa from Raw Food Romance went raw overnight, and that works for some people and that's their personality. But for other people, I can say for myself, I was never able to do that. I have moved towards eating a lot more raw foods incrementally. And if that is your end goal or whatever your end goal could be for anybody, you move towards it incrementally. If right now you're eating 2 bars of chocolate every night or, a pint of ice cream every day, those connections, those dopamine hits connected to those foods are strong. So maybe instead of 2 bars tonight, you decide, I'm going to do 1.5 bars, and I'm going to put that other 1.5 bars in the garage, and I'm going to lock the door. And then, a couple weeks down the road, you decide to make it a little bit less. You have until you can wean yourself off. That works for some people, and other people, it does take to go cold turkey. Say, this behavior is not serving me. I've got to get this out of my life. And then you can find an alternative. Just what is your personality? There's all these people all over the place telling you what you should do exactly. But I think all of these ideas are helpful, and they're all pieces of the puzzle. But at the end of the day, you have to look at your own personality. You have to look at what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and move forward with that, because that's the most important thing. I think, take the information, try it, and see what works for you. And then incrementally you can get where you want to go. Yeah.
Right. And maybe work with a coach like yourself,
Yes.
Other people that have helped people with this. Do you work with people individually or groups, or do you have a program?
Yeah, I work with people individually and in groups. My next group is starting on February 20th. And it's centered around the concepts that are in my Vegan Michele Wellness Method. I have an online course that's a complement to the coaching, but I totally agree. Whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, having a bit of accountability can take you from running in the same circle around the same mountain for 5-10 years to being able to have tools in your tool belt, to being able to have accountability to somebody who gets it, who knows what's going on, and who you can be like, hey, I'm struggling today, or write me, or on the next call, I am struggling. What do I do in this situation? Just having somebody to stay accountable to, or, hey, I paid money for this, I'm going to make sure that I actually do this. It really levels it up to the next best level of yourself. I think that's a big component.
Yeah, thank you. Here is a question from Cheryl. What place does fasting play in changing one's relationship with food, specifically intermittent fasting?
Hi, Cheryl. I love intermittent fasting. It was one of the things that personally helped me get over that tie to food, changing my relationship to food. And, that might seem extreme to someone who's never heard of this before, but I love it. It has been one of the biggest tools for me personally. It is what I share within my vegan wellness method. But it doesn't have to be that way either. But for intermittent fasting, what it can do is get your body clock back on check. And it also will help curb your hunger. When you begin to say, okay, this is my eating window, I'm going to stop at such and such a time, I'm going to start at such and such a time. And when that window is over, the kitchen is closed. If you want to have some water or an herbal tea, great. But initially it might feel hard, but after you do this for about 3 days, even, you'll notice when in the time of in your fasted window, you'll notice that your hunger has decreased. And sometimes this can be very eye-opening to people and very helpful. I can tell you, in times when I have intermittent fasted, I'm getting plenty of food because I'm preparing ahead. I'm having my meals. Personally, I do about 2 larger meals a day, but whether you decide to do 3 meals, no snacks, or 2 larger meals, whatever it is that's going to work for you, or whatever feels doable to you. And then your eating window is closed, even if it's intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, where you're stopping eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. That alone can save you tons of calories. So I used to be a really big late night snacker. I would eat great all day. I was like the picture of perfection, vegan perfection. But at night, I let those floodgates open, and I could easily eat 500 to 800 additional calories or more on snacks. And so when I decided to put a line in the sand for myself and say, okay, I'm done with this, I'm going to start doing intermittent fasting, and I'm going to, the kitchen will be closed at that time. Was it hard for the first couple of days? Of course it was. Was I hungry? Yeah, I felt those hunger pains. We automatically want to reach for something to put in our mouths all the time. It starts to happen when we're a baby and we get a bottle shoved in there. But anyways, beyond the psychological stuff, yes, this has helped me as one of the biggest tools that I could ever use, because eventually, you're not hungry during that fasted period. And one of the best things, in my opinion, that you can do is give this a shot and see if it makes a difference for you. Because immediately you'll see that you're not consuming as much on a daily basis, which will put you in a little bit of a calorie deficit. And it will also just start to, I can honestly say, when I stop eating and I close that eating window, I'm not hungry in the fasted time anymore. But, it takes time. So I appreciate that question, Cheryl, because it is definitely something that I personally believe in and I've seen work for a lot of clients. And if that just seems insane to you right now, know that you can totally reap the benefits by eating whole food plant-based without that. But if you're ready to take it to the next level, or if you feel like what you're doing is not working, that can be something that is very helpful, in my personal opinion.
Yes. And, you're talking about intermittent fasting, which is great. Water fasting is a whole nother ball game. If somebody has a discordant relationship with food, that might not be something that is recommended unless they talk to somebody that's an expert like Dr. Goldhammer,
Absolutely. Yes. Definitely talking about intermittent fasting, time restricted eating.
What I think is so nice about that is that one of the biggest problems with people that eat emotionally is they eat after dinner when they're not hungry because they're bored or lonely, and just not eating at night can be just such a huge help to people.
Yeah, totally. And I think also not eating at night and taking away those associative behaviors is very important. So if you were always binge eating and watching Netflix, time to turn that phone or that computer off, pick up a physical book, go to a room that does not have access to food in it, even just for a couple of days, using that parenting yourself or self-discipline a little bit more for the time it takes to cross over from where you are to where you want to be. And oftentimes that's not very long if you can stick to your discipline plan. And then you will find that when you disassociate from the behaviors that you would typically overeat with, and your hunger decreases because of using intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, you're like, wow, this feels like freedom. I can do this. I can actually do this.
Wow, that's great. Thanks. We think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Cindy says, what is the best way to encourage a family member you live with to adopt a whole food plant-based SOS diet who is currently a vegetarian? See, I wouldn't make people go SOS free right away. That would not be something I would recommend as their first thing, No,
I totally agree. I think that I would not go SOS free at all. I would just be the example, be the example, create some vegan, yummy meals that you enjoy, that this other person can enjoy. And, I can tell you, if I love hot food, if I did not have access to hot sauces and dips and dressings that tasted good to me, I would have never gone down this road. So again, it comes back down to those incremental steps. If they're vegetarian right now, make some vegan food that tastes really good. Having a pile of broccoli alone is not appetizing to someone who has not been eating this way for very long. But having a pile of broccoli that has a really delicious vegan cheese sauce on it, and maybe a little hot sauce or a vegan Parmesan cheese, makes it so much more palatable. And I think also to realize that we can't change anybody, right? We only have control over ourselves. I have in the past wanted so badly for people to change their dietary choices in my family, because I saw them suffering from lifestyle diseases. And until they made that choice on their own, I couldn't do anything. But what I could do was bring them delicious vegan food. And what I could do was help introduce them to new recipes that would help them realize, oh, hey, this is not as, complicated and drama filled as I thought it was. I could do this. This is good, little by little, and just lead as an example.
Nice. What do you do for exercise? You said you used to be a singer and a dancer. Are you still singing and dancing?
I do it occasionally. Like, I used to live in Las Vegas, so I was working all the time, but we moved up to the Reno area, and there's like a handful of casinos. So not very much.
You live in Reno?
I do. Uh-huh.
Why don't you come over? It's only 2 hours from where I live now.
Oh, are you in Sacramento?
Well, near, yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to.
Conference here. Oh my God, there's vegan doctors here and everything. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, I would love to. That'd be awesome. So I perform a little bit here and there. Mostly I do Pilates, walking. I think when it comes to exercise, you gotta just do what you like. Because if you hate it, again, with the food, if you hate the food you're eating, you're not gonna stick with it.
You shouldn't eat something you hate, and you shouldn't do exercise you hate.
Yeah, just find something you enjoy. Sitting on the couch all day versus sitting on the couch most of the day and going for a walk for an hour is going to be a whole lot more beneficial to you. So find something you enjoy.
Nice. Well, this is great. I look forward to checking out your course with all the other 121 offerings in the bundle. I've been posting your link to get the bundle in the chat in the show notes. So if you'd like to get it from Michele, click the link because it is absolutely fabulous. And there's such a depth and breadth of different things, different types of courses. And it's not just recipes, although there are over 2,000 recipes.
I love it. I appreciate you being here. And yeah, I'd love to meet up in Sacramento. And guys, thank you so much for being here and for your questions, because I really think to bring this to a practical level, it's important to guess and just really audit yourself. Where is my biggest struggle and how can I fix that? And so I hope that this information has been helpful to you. And if you buy the bundle, that this portion will be helpful to you. And there's so much helpful stuff in there. So thanks, AJ, for having me on.
Thank you so much, Vegan Michele. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in about 20 minutes when we have Dr. John McDougall for McDougall Monday with his wife, Mary. And he's going to be talking about why you may not want to get a colonoscopy.